Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
They call the makeshift clubs where Trinidadians sing calypso, calypso tents. They're shrines to the memory of Africa and slavery. There's something special about tonight's star performer. She's not black, but Indian. Her name is Drupati. This is the story of how India came to the Caribbean and how its children view the world they found there. East Indians, as the West Indians call them, are a very distinct group. Arranged marriages are still the norm for women like Drupati. Singing in public is not. Drupati's appearance in the Calypso tents is a small revolution at the heart of a clash between two cultures. You can find Indians like these scattered all over the Caribbean, but their impact has been greatest in two countries. Trinidad is one, where towns like this, Chaguanas, seem like fragments of Asia transported to the New World. The other is Guyana, the former British colony on the mainland of South America. In both, Indians outnumber any other ethnic group. Their presence here is the unexpected outcome of the abolition of slavery. When slavery was abolished, the planters were convinced that their prosperity depended on finding an alternative supply of cheap labor. And in 1838, John Gladstone, the father of the great Liberal Prime Minister William Gladstone, brought 398 workers from India to his Guyanese estate. Thousands followed. They were known as indentured workers because they were tied to the plantation on contract for 5 years. And they worked and lived in conditions little better than chattel slavery. Between 1838 and the abolition of indenture, Trinidad imported 150,000 East Indians. Guyana, nearly 250,000. Dwaka Singh is one of the few still alive. He arrived in Guyana packed in the hold of a ship from Calcutta. He's 100 years old.
वहाँ पर आते हुए हम लोग को हमारे सिपाही लोग ले गए वहाँ पर डिपो में वहाँ पर डिपो फिर हम लोग रहा दो तीन रोज उसके उपरांत हम लोग सात आदमी रहे जहाज में कुछ हमारे बर्बीस गए कोई डायमंड में गया कोई रंगना में आया हम लोग फ्रांस में गए ऐसे ये सब हमारे आदमी सब चले गए हम लोग रह गए यहाँ पर ये स्टेट टूट गया ये स्टेट टूटने के बाद में आदमी लोग सब चले गए इधर उधर कोई हमारे चले गए वन में कोई चले गए हमारे दूसरे देश में बहुत हमारे दूसरा देश में चला गया.
A Guyanese Chief Justice once called indenture a monstrous, rotten system rooted in slavery, emulating its worst abuses, only more dangerous because it presents itself under false colors. Indians brought few material possessions with them. What they did bring was India itself, its culture and its strong sense of family values. Conditions on the sugar estates have changed little. Men still go to work as their grandfathers did, in a barge drawn by oxen along a canal. It takes this cane cutter, Rashid, 2 hours to get to the place where he can start earning his daily wage.
I'm a big thief.
When their 5-year contracts were over, some Indians went home. Others got a fragment of land and prospered. But most families remained trapped in a cycle of work and poverty long after the system ended. Rashid dreams, as they all dream, of earning enough money to change his life.
I don't believe there will be any other harder work than they do it. Because in heat, in sun, rain, storm, they have to do this work.
What the cutters want most is a fair wage.
Because the work what they perform is a dangerous work and a deadly work. They really deserve a good pay.
But when payday comes, it's always a disappointment. In season, Rashid may get around £20 a week, but the rest of the year, he's lucky to get 6. A few yards from the pay shed, Rashid meets a familiar figure, the local moneylender. Debts have mounted up. Much of what he earns has to be handed over. It's hard on Rashid and on his family.
I have a wife and 2 children, so we have to try to get feet to work and carry on our house. The wages what I collect this week, I don't believe it can carry on my house for this week. It will be a very rough week for me. We have to work and strive for ourselves and eat. Work and eat. We hardly get to save.
The Indians settled in villages near the plantation and put up their prayer flags. They had little contact with the rest of the population. Their main ambition was a house of their own, something few have ever been able to afford.
We can't even build a squat house or board around a house, so we can't just earn to build anything.
The family is the focus of hope. The poor of India brought that notion to the Caribbean too. Rashid and his wife know that the best chance their children have of a better life is to get a decent education.
I would like him to be educated and be somebody, and not to work in any fields. Because the punishment that I go through, I wouldn't like for him to go through that.
You have to try very hard for them to get their education. Very, very hard. You have to try for your children. Well, I want them to get the education. Every little education they can take, they must take it. Don't be like me, because I didn't go far at school. And I want my children to go, so they can get their education and get a better job in later days.
And I love them. I want them to take all what they could get, this education and anything, and try to let them grow in a good manner to be somebody.
This estate belongs to Kayman Sanka. He did find a way out. He started life as a cane cutter on the same estate as Rashid. At 14, he was given 1 acre of land. Now he owns 1,800 acres. These Indian women are sweeping his private cricket pitch.
And I said to do good things for my kid, I should own land. I knew that I had to own lands and work for myself. I have seen people made progress, and I wanted to be one of them who have made progress. I looked at people where I was born, and they had Indian people who were migrated from India. They had rice mills, they had shops, And I wanted to know why I can't be like them. And I should be like them and be bigger than them. Most of all, I wanted my kids to grow and be very comfortable, not to work as hard as me.
Planes are rare in Guyana, but the Sanka family now own more planes than the government itself. Cayman's son, Benny, commutes to work each day in one of them, passing over the land which has made them rich. Growing rice has been the Sanka's passport to wealth. The Indians brought new agricultural skills to the Caribbean. Some irrigation canals had been dug by the slaves before they arrived, but it was the Indians who turned the swamps into paddy fields and changed the face of the land forever.
I feel the Indian people are sort of blessed with the soil. Our forefathers who came from India were sort of farmers also, and I think that is built into us. And I can tell you personally, I like farming, I like the land. You know, no way I want to be stuck in an office or something like that.
This is the legacy of indenture, as far as the eye can see. These Indian boys work 8 hours a day to clear the canals on the Sanka estate. They're on the first rung of the ladder of daily toil. Wages are so low that most Indians have remained locked into a pattern of rural poverty which has scarcely changed in 100 years. And those smallholders who did manage to own a piece of land are gradually going out of business. What helped the Sankas survive and prosper were the deals they were able to make with the government. Instead of selling their rice at a fixed price to the government board, they made arrangements to sell it directly onto the world market. That meant the Sankas could afford to mechanize, widening still further the gap between them and the smaller rice farmers who had to accept lower prices. But it's not the wealthy Indians, the Sankas, which those small farmers blame for their plight. It's the government bureaucracy, which happens to be black.
So, all we got to do is just help ourselves by hand.
Fewer and fewer small farmers continue to harvest rice in the way they brought from India.
Life for the small farmers seemed to be miserable because small farmers are not getting the incentives that they really need to make a decent livelihood out of rice farming. Mr. Sankar, he has been getting all the incentives and facilities, and that is why he has been taking and making so many lands into cultivation. Had that been given to the small farmers, they would have been able to make a living.
The poor farmers look enviously at what the Sankas have got out of their deal with the government and wonder why they have been discriminated against. They say they feed Guyana, they have created its agriculture, but all the blacks in government allow them is the crumbs from the table.
I'm very much worried about the future of the paddy farmers. If the prices don't increase, the small farmers are going to be phased out.
The experience of other immigrants is more mixed. This is a Catholic church in Trinidad. The priest conducting the service is also the grandson of an indentured worker. The Chinese started coming to the Caribbean at the same time as the Indians, though in far smaller numbers.
He ascended into heaven.
The congregation know their priest as Father Williams, but his original name was Lai Fook.
And his kingdom will have no end. My grandmother was born in Shekwan, that is, I think, is the largest province in China, southwest of China, bordering on Tibet. As a young girl, she was kidnapped to be sold into slavery, I suppose. Now, as a child, she had had pox, and she had lost the sight in one eye. And I think that is what helped her, because otherwise she might have been sold into a brothel. But as it is, she was bought by a lady who used her as her maid. And I think that is how she came to be in Canton. And it was while she was a maid for this woman, I suppose she was kidnapped a second time, shanghaied, and brought over to Guyana to work as an indentured laborer.
That was 100 years ago. She met her husband on the boat bringing her to the Caribbean. He was Chinese, and he'd fallen on hard times and had chosen indenture as a way out. The churches offered one way for immigrants to change their status. Father Lai Fook's grandparents became Anglicans, his mother a Catholic, he a priest, and they changed their name to Williams. For the Chinese, creolization often began as soon as they landed.
Most of the people who came were men, single men, or at least if they were married, they left their family and wife behind. And most of the time, they married or they lived with a local person.
And so today, in the hills above Port of Spain, it's a thoroughly mixed Williams family who settle down for Sunday lunch. There are 4 generations present. The food is Chinese, but there's little else to remind you of their origins. These people are part of Trinidad's prosperous middle class, excluded from direct political power, but too busy and successful to worry about it.
I think we have become very westernized. I think we have been absorbed into the society. Now, in my own family, I always took the view that we were West Indians, that we live here, we make our living here, our future is in the Caribbean, and therefore we should discard these notions of remaining Chinese, that we must become West Indians. We just did not have any great discussions about who was Chinese, who was not. We just regarded everybody as people.
Richard Williams has an East Indian wife. The Chinese, rather like the Syrians, Lebanese, and other non-colonial immigrants to the Caribbean, tend to be classified for convenience as honorary whites, but they mix easily with everyone. Richard's twin brother, Peter, has also married an Indian woman. But Fern, who is personnel director in a family tailoring business, has a sharper view of how the majority live. Fern's policy is to employ both Indian and black women. The problems she comes across among her staff reflect the different ways women are treated in the two cultures.
When they start giving trouble, you know, right away, that something is wrong, and you call them and you talk to them, and what is the problem? They cry their heart out to you, and you have to give them that because they probably have nobody else to talk to. And the Indian race, they tend to get the beating of the wives from the husbands and taking away their salaries and things like that. Whereas the Africans, you get them multiplying at an enormous rate. They're always on maternity leave.
Like everyone else, Fern is aware of the mutual suspicions between Indians and blacks, but she tries to find a positive side to the typecast images.
We came as indentured laborers, you know, and, you know, I guess we're not as spendthrift as the Africans tend to be. Yeah, that's a fact. We always say, well, if the Indians took over the country, it'll be successful, but that's not true. The business are Indians are very selfish people. They keep their money. They don't spend it, whereas the Africans do. You know, they spend and they keep the economy going. We don't.
What really powers Trinidad's economy is oil. When the price is down, Trinidad slumps. When it's up, Trinidad is the richest island in the Caribbean. Either way, that relative prosperity that trickles down through the economy blurs the tension between the races. There are other differences too. Trinidad is more mixed than Guyana. Not only the Chinese, but Jews, Syrians, Lebanese, as well as people of European descent, help to cushion the divide between Indians and blacks. And in the Indian community, there are also differences of class and wealth. So to see the racial divide at its starkest, you have to go to where Indians are poorest, and that's back to the cane fields of Guyana. Every summer in Guyana, they set fire to the cane fields to burn out the trash. However well a minority of indentured workers have done, the harsh realities of the Indian experience are unavoidable. This overseer, Roy Ramroop, is a typical descendant of those long-suffering Indians who were shipped across the world to replace the slaves. They're stoical, hard-working, devout, and still cling on to the traditions of the India they left behind.
They're industrious, and they have this drive, and they will put pleasure aside for the welfare of their family and themselves. From an economic angle, this country would never have been viable and prosperous if you hadn't used the indentured ship system to get the Indians to work in this country. But then when you take from it from a moral, from a spiritual, from a religious angle, it's, you know, it's not that nice, because you're separating, you know, family from, you know, their ancestors, from their brother, their sisters. They would never see them back in their lives.
Religion is their principal consolation. Despised as poor coolies in the New World, they were still the sons and daughters of Lord Rama, Mahavira, and Krishna. Worshipping in the traditional Hindu way has kept these Indian families together in adversity.
Religion is our way of life, right? And it is inseparable from us. The Hindus have devised a system of greeting their God. They will bow to him, they will wave lights, they will fan him. And all the comfort that you will give a living being, we give to our God, and a little more, because we give it with much devotion, we give it with sincerity, and that is what we do in our services. Our God is a living God, and he is there, here, there, and everywhere, and he got to be at the altar too, to that we bow. We pray that we can have the strength to survive in this country, and we pray to our God, and we pray sincerely, and that is what keeps us going.
Roy's father, old Mr. Ramroop, has a story which sums up the suffering and the fortitude of these children of bonded labor. He was in the burning cane field one day when the wind suddenly changed direction.
So he tried to run, and he got trapped in the fire because he stumbled in the cane. And before he could get up, the fire came on him and started to burn him. He sat squatting, in a crouching position, while the fire kept raging around him, burning him, all about the body, burning him in the midst of it. After the fire passed, he saw that he was still alive. He never lost unconsciousness. He was aware of the fire roasting him. He got up and he said, I have burned so much, let me burn a little more and die. It's no sense of being alive.
Well, I asked the God to kill me because I couldn't bear it. Even I wanted to jump in the water, I couldn't make it. The whole skin was burned.
Mr. Ramroop is now 70, but he still has to work. After 50 years of cutting cane, he has a pension of just 35 pence a week.
Well, I tell you, I am a pensioner. And the money, what we get, can't maintain the home. The money is too small. So I have to work. I got my old lady.
A year ago, his wife had a stroke, and he's looked after her night and day since then. Bonded labor to the end.
Yes, I like work.
The tensions of race, class, and poverty are lived out every day in the cane fields. The price for a day's work is set in the head office, miles away. Roy's job is to make the cane cutters accept it.
I am aware of the discontentment in the minds of the cane cutter. So what I do, I employ a strategy to get on with my work and make it easy. I start to talk about the standard of work he's giving me, you know, to sort of cool him off a little, because he's aware that he's wrong to cut his thumb a little high.
Rashid, what are you doing, boy?
Once Roy and Rashid went to school together. Now Roy's job is to beat him down.
So what I do is to start a little quarrel about the kind of work he's giving me, so that he wouldn't want to ask for more money.
Show me how you want it.
Right, Rashid, we all have our work to do. The foreman has his job to do. He's being paid to supervise you, Rashid. Yeah, so you can't blame the gentleman. He's doing his work. Right? Anyway, you get 1 1/4 hour for this work, right? Look at all this stump and this cabbage. We can't accept that, yeah? And after humbling him a little, then I start to get on with the price. I put my foreman there to negotiate with him. And then in the final analysis, if there's any discontentment, well, then I come in and I try to iron it out and get the work going. And this is how I get on. Yeah, you take the cut. Rashid, I think the foreman gave you a very reasonable price. You want 2 1/2 hours?
Yes.
And the foreman pay you 1 1/2?
No, yes, no.
All right, David, I tell you what. Rashid does help us pick up work and so now and then, right?
Right.
So what you want to do? Try to see with him, right? We're going to give him a half hour, we'll make it 2 hours. And so it's a compromise between 1 1/2. 2 hours, right?
As an overseer, Roy is the visible target of the workers' anger against the system, a dangerous thing to be.
I can remember I was stopped for one time, right? Doing my job, right? So you find that our lives are at stake when we come into this field, and it's difficult negotiating with the cane cutters because of dissatisfaction not stem from us. We have tariffs to pay and we are guided by that. We can't go beyond that or else we get sacked.
Sugar is a hard taskmaster. For years, the problem was that Booker's, the British sugar monopoly, owned everything in sight in Ghana. But since nationalization, things have gone from bad to worse. And now there's no external enemy to blame. The anger turns inward, sharpening the tension between Indians and blacks. What Indians like Roy resent is that blacks with little knowledge of the industry have been put in as managers.
They drifted into the office jobs. They drifted into the managerial positions, selected position, key positions. They have dominated the country.
The problems are defined in simple racial terms. Indians see blacks as lazy, blacks see Indians as coolies, fit only for laboring.
You find it is only Indo-Guyanese working in the sugar industry now, doing the manual work, the jackass work, to use a strong term. And that is how it is now.
The bitterness goes back a long way. Blacks still blame the import of cheap Indian labor for the miserable wages the planters paid the ex-slaves after emancipation. Indians say blacks survive by living off someone else's labor. The political system has fossilized around these bitter stereotypes.
They don't want to work hard. We Indians have to work hard. So I really call those Africans dogs. They don't want to work, they only thieving at people's home. Come in, if they don't get to thief, they kill you. What you got? If you didn't get anything, they kill yourself. So that is